Sorry for the delay, guys. We will get started in like right now. Oh, oh my God. There we go. There we go.
So, hey guys, welcome to Intro to Android. Hope you guys had a great fall break. Yeah, let's get started. So first, we're going to talk about course logistics. Then we'll, talk about the basics of Kotlin and Compose, and then we'll get into building the UI. So, just to start things off, I'll introduce myself. Hi, I'm Andrew. I'm from Jericho. I'm an Android developer, currently working on our new app Hustle, and I used to work on Uplift. I'm a senior in arts and science studying CS. I enjoy going to the gym. I play the piano violin, and I enjoy assembling plastic model kits.
Hi, I'm Caleb. I'm from Maryland. I am a sophomore studying CS and math. I'm in arts and sciences. I'm an even more washed pianist, and I'm a Ocaml enjoyer. You guys have taken 3110. So yeah, before we begin, make sure you guys have Android Studio downloaded. So actually, could raise your hand if you already have Android Studio? Okay, so yeah, I guess take like 2 minutes just to download Android Studio. You should just be able to search up Android Studio on Google and then just download whatever OS you have. Yeah, so we'll get back together at 8:43 and let us know if you're having trouble downloading it.
Android Studio, just select the demo.
Yes. Studio open, but so it's like a specific project or
Oh no, just like anything. We just like
oh, just
make a
start.
file with the
Okay,
start code.
yeah. See. Reverse. Reverse. So it's 8:43. So if you have not completed downloading it, don't worry too much about it because I guess we'll only need it for when we're doing like the demo activity later on. So we can just defer to then. So yeah, I'll talk a little bit about the logistics, just get that out of the way. So yeah, as you know, all class times are between 8:35 p.m. to 9:25 p.m. Sorry, we got started a little bit late today due to technical difficulties, but yeah, lectures will be on Mondays. So today is kind of different because we are starting on a Wednesday, so it'll mostly be a lecture. But yeah, generally lectures will be on Mondays and we'll do like a demo on Wednesday, which is essentially where you get to code something by yourself, and essentially we just guide you through it if you have any questions or anything. And yeah, our lectures will be posted on YouTube, so if you want to go back and look at any of the previous lectures, you can do that. And yeah, if you access our course textbook, you can see our full schedule. Do you guys know how to access this textbook? Okay. Uh, I guess what you can do is you can just go to our website. Is there a faster way? This is probably the most direct. And then courses, then go to Android. And yeah, we should have the textbook right here. So uh, yeah, so should be able to access it here. It's not completely updated, so it'll have some stuff from last semester, but yeah, it has essentially all the slides and videos and everything that you will need. Okay. Enrollment info. Have you guys all enrolled in the 1998 602 class? Okay, good. So yeah, if you have not yet, the deadline is this 22nd, and if you want to drop, then the deadline is November 12th. And yeah, if you need any help, we have an ed discussion, which I think all of you guys should have gotten the invite to. Uh, and yeah, we have weekly office hours by not only us, but other Android members on app dev. So yeah, you should probably download the Google Calendar. I think right now it's not populated.
Yeah, it'll be next week.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that'll be on our syllabus. And yeah, I just showed the course website. And yeah, for grading, it's essentially a set of assignments, and then the hack challenge, and then participation. So assignments are pretty much what you expect. Basically, uh, we give you some Android Studio projects, and you have to essentially create some features or fix some bugs and stuff like that. And then, yeah, that's going to be 65%. And the hack challenge is basically where you guys will get to collaborate with other students who are taking Intro to iOS or DPD and be able to come up with like an actual app from 0 to 1. And you sort of have to compete whose app is better, stuff like that. And yeah, participation, talk a little bit more about that. So yeah, it's going to be 6 weeks of lecture. I think we have like two bonus lectures, which are optional. And then, yeah, it's going to be 5 programming assignments plus the first one, which is going to be ungraded. So not too much pressure there. And then the hack challenge. Yeah, this is a project-based course. There will be no exams. Uh, and yeah, late policy, 6 total slip days, 2 max per assignment. So meaning you can miss or you can submit up to 2 days late for each assignment. And yeah, attendance, yeah, it's going to be taken on both lectures and demos, and it's going to be 15% of your grade. So yeah, we highly encourage that you come. And yeah, we'll show like a QR code that you can use to follow up for attendance and yeah, academic integrity. So this is a CS class, or yeah, this is a CS class. So naturally, the internet is going to be a very valuable resource. Uh, yeah, so we even encourage you to utilize like LLMs to gain like a better understanding of the language, or just like if you have questions about syntax, like no coder like remembers all the syntax for every language they know. So yeah, just search out. You don't have to. Yeah, just look at the Google AI overview. Those are pretty helpful. But plagiarism is bad. If we're doing assignments, we want to know that that is sort of your own work. So I mean, we know that the assignments can be completed by LLMs like very quickly. But if you want to get something out of it, I would highly recommend that all the code you write is written by yourself. And that is that is an imposing picture of our advisor who you may have to talk to if there are issues with integrity. Uh, any questions about logistics? All right. Okay, so let's actually start talking about Kotlin and Compose. Okay, raise your hand if you have like some experience with Java. Okay, so a lot of people, yeah. So that's good because Kotlin is essentially an improvement upon Java, right? So Java actually used to be the primary language of development for Android development, but Google essentially just created this better language, which is Kotlin. Yeah, so we won't talk about all the features that Kotlin comes with because yeah, you guys will mostly be familiar with it from Java, but yeah, we'll just sort of focus on what makes Kotlin different from Java. So essentially it's like writing Java, but it's easier and you're not sacrificing a lot of performance. So it's like the best of both worlds between a simpler language like Python and a more robust language like Java. And yeah, the stereotype about Java being very verbose and like not pleasant to write. So yeah, Kotlin is essentially just a improvement, as I said. So yeah, let's talk about some key features. So these are going to be pretty important for the rest of the lectures because yeah, from now on we will sort of assume knowledge with Kotlin after this lecture. So this is going to be our only lecture on the language itself. So uh, no pressure because you can always look at the documentation. But yeah, if you have any questions or if you're confused on anything, just yeah, let us know. Uh, yeah. Firstly, uh, Kotlin, like Java, is statically typed, but unlike Java, it has type inference. So what that means is static typing means essentially if you assign like a variable, then you cannot change the type of the variable. So as you can see here, name is set to Leslie. The variable is set to Leslie. So what Kotlin understands that to be is that name is a string variable. So we cannot later assign name equals 4, for instance. So it's unlike Python in that sense and similar to Java, but we have what is called type inference. So what that is instead of specifying the data type of each variable, we are able to uh, not do so and sort of let Kotlin figure it out. So as you can see, at the bottom, we have val name is string, and then we assign the value Leslie to that name. So this is explicit typing because we stated the type, right? String. But on the first line, it's going to be implicit because by the fact that it's being assigned as string literal, Kotlin just knows that this is going to be a string. So this is a very useful feature of Kotlin. And yeah, I guess note the syntax for the variable. So it's either going to have val or var followed by the variable name, and then optionally the type after a colon. Any questions on that? Okay. Okay. So another unique feature of Kotlin is mutable and immutable variables. So if you declare a variable with a keyword val, val, that variable is not going to be able to be changed, i.e. it is immutable. So if we assign val name equals Leslie, then we cannot uh, reassign name to be Ada. So this is going to be incorrect. But if you declare a variable with the keyword var, then that is going to be a writable or mutable variable. So as you can see, uh, we are able to reassign name to Ada. And I guess the question might be like, what is the use of this? Why not just make everything var? Well, the point is sort of that you have a guarantee that this variable is not going to change. So it makes reasoning about with your code simpler so that you don't have to think about, oh, what if my variable is getting changed by some other method? Well, no, it's a val, so yeah. So yeah, um, essentially what you want to do is make all variables val if you're not going to ever need to change it. And the Android Studio will also tell you if you're not changing it, then you should probably make it a val. Okay, now we get to the more fun stuff. So Java has this big problem, which is null. So that's been called like the $1 billion mistake because uh, null pointer exceptions are kind of bad. So what Kotlin the way in which Kotlin is different from Java that makes it easier to deal with null values is that you have to make types explicitly nullable if you want that variable to have null as a possible value. So look at the first line, which says val name one is string. So we cannot assign null to that value because the type string is not nullable, as we say, meaning you cannot assign null. So if you really need to assign the value null, if that is a convenient value to have, then we make the type nullable, which we do by adding a question mark after the type. So string question mark is the nullable string type. So in that case, we can assign it to null. So again, you might ask, what's the point of this? Why don't you make everything nullable? Well, again, it's a guarantee that you're never going to have a null value for this, so you can always apply the methods and properties that are associated with that variable without worrying that you're calling it on a null object. So yeah, yeah, if you have a nullable variable, you cannot directly call access to variables, such as with name2.length. We can't do that because name2 may be null because it is a nullable string type. So what we have to do is use a save call. So what a save call is essentially the question mark and then dot. So what that entails is if name2 is not null, then we access this length. But what happens if it's null? Then the whole thing just returns null. So essentially, it's equivalent to if name2 not null, then name2 dot length, else null, right? And then you can add upon that with the default if null operator, in which case you do name2 and then question mark colon and then some default value, which it returns if name2 is null. Does that make sense? Okay. Uh, yeah. I know this is kind of confusing, so later on, if you have any questions, please ask. Okay. Yeah. It makes null pointer exceptions rare and code correctness easier. Okay, moving on. Another very useful thing that Kotlin has is anonymous functions. So essentially, anonymous functions, or maybe you heard the term lambda before, but it's essentially a way to use functions without creating like a new uh, function for it, basically. So if you have this function, fun my function, uh, which takes an int param, which is an int, we can do the same thing, but make it into a variable. So now that variable is going to have the function type, which takes in an int and then does something with it. So yeah, these functions are defined with the curly braces, and then yeah, this is called an anonymous function. Uh, I guess can give like an example. Yeah. So this would be an example. So we have val add. So it looks like we're declaring a variable, but its type, we define it to be something that takes in two integers and then outputs an int, right? And then what we have here is the anonymous function. So the syntax is kind of tricky when you first look at it, but essentially what you have is these two parameters. And you have to specify the type because we're not assigning it, right? So we have to know their types. So A is int, B is int, and then we have this arrow, and then we have A plus B, which is going to be our return value. So you can treat this as a regular function. Uh, so you can do add 2, 3, and then if we print that, that's just going to be 5. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Okay. Lists. These are more easier of a concept. Uh, it's sort of similar to how lists operate with Python because you have all the convenient methods that come along with that. But the primary difference is that we distinguish between a list and a mutable list. So again, it's sort of similar to the difference between a val and a var, where the list just by itself, that list is not going to be mutable. So we cannot add or remove or change any uh, elements in the list. But yeah, we have to make it a mutable list type in order for us to be able to do set things. So yeah, both data types come with uh, size, contains, get, index of. You can sort of guess what each of those methods do and the properties. But only if you use mutable lists can you add, clear, remove, add, and set. And yeah, I guess if you want to access like the first element, you have like the similar syntax, right? Nums and then inside brackets you put the index. But yeah, yes.
Is there like a array type or is list just the array type?
Uh, actually, there is an array type, right?
Yeah, I think they're
Is
Yeah,
different like one's heap allocated, one's not allocated?
I believe so. I would say that that would be my guess, right? Because that is probably how it was done in Java. But yeah, yeah, typically we do use like less and mutable lists more than arrays. But yeah, I think if you wanted to use arrays, there's definitely gonna be a documentation for that. Okay. Higher order functions. Uh, what are they? Well, they are functions that either take in other functions as inputs or return functions. So this comes more from like functional programming, where we are treating functions as sort of objects themselves, which is sort of similar to how we dealt with anonymous functions earlier. But yeah, this is where those anonymous functions are actually useful because you were probably thinking, okay, I can declare a function or I can declare a variable which has a function, so what's the difference? Well, here we are passing in a function. So we have a list of numbers, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. So what if we want to get a new list which contains only the even numbers from the original list? Well, we use the filter method. But you might be asking, like, what does a filter method take in? Well, it's actually an anonymous function which takes in like the element type and it returns a Boolean. So what that does is it applies that function to every single element, and then if it returns true, we are adding it to the list that is returned. So uh yeah, that syntax is actually shorthand for placing the anonymous function inside like regular parentheses. So that anonymous function is actually a parameter to the function filter. And then similarly, we have map, which returns a new value based on the value of the list element. So here it is just the default argument. So you can think of it as the same as like it, arrow, and then it times it, meaning it takes in the number and then it returns the square. So you can sort of see that in action. So we have val, nums, stuff, and then we can print the filtered list. And we do get just 2 and 4. And then we can map to the squares, and then we get the list with each element squared. And yeah, what I was saying earlier is this is essentially the same as doing this, right? Because we are assuming there's an argument it, and then we are returning it times it, and then similarly for this. So it should have the same effects. Okay. And yeah, you'll learn more about Kotlin with practice. Don't worry if you feel like that was a lot, because yeah, with practice, you'll be able to sort of consolidate those ideas. Any questions about Kotlin? Okay. Yeah. So let's now move on to Jetpack Compose.
Great. Great. Okay. Let's talk about Jetpack Compose. So Caleb kind of talked about Kotlin, which is the language which we use to make Android apps. So Compose is actually what lets you build the UI that you see. So yeah, it's kind of like if you guys are familiar with web development, like what React is to JavaScript. All right, so you'll probably see this a lot when we're working with Compose, the at composable annotation. So when you put it on top of a function, it actually converts it into a UI component that you can call. And yeah, so like you'll see that we'll probably call composables within composables, which you'll see in a minute. And yeah, this eatery card is an example of an example component. So it's made up of multiple composables, or it's kind of interchangeable. Composables and components are essentially the same thing. Yeah, thank you. So right here, oops. Yeah, so like the inside red rectangles, like those kind of represents example components, and the outside one is like the overall component. Yeah. So here, as you can see, in the green rectangle, that represents we'll just call it like title row, right? That's a composable, and it takes in a parameter like name, and then for we can call that composable inside this overarching one, which we'll call eatery card. And you can see that here we pass in the name parameter to the title row. And yeah, oops, okay. once you've actually built the UI component, you can reuse it in any other UI. So like for example, Eatery has like multiple eateries, right? So we can reuse this component. We don't have to like rewrite the same like composable again. So yeah, we have like Becker, Cook, and Beta. So we have a column with all three, and we reuse the eatery card component. Yeah, so that's pretty much what composables are. Any questions? All right. Now we'll get into the more interesting stuff with actually building the UI. So you can kind of break down most things in Compose as either a container or a view. The container is like example column, rows, or boxes. Like they like kind of determine the layout or the positioning of the different items inside the UI. And the view can be an example like images, buttons, like they kind of show stuff or you can interact with them. And here are like the most common ones, as I mentioned, column, row, and box. They're pretty self-explanatory, but column is vertical placements, row is like horizontal, and box, you can stack items on top of each other. And next lecture, we'll actually go over lazy row and lazy column. And here's the Instagram screen. And in the next few slides, I'll kind of break down some of the composables that make up this screen using the layouts. So for a column, we can actually break down this post component as a column. So like here we can think of it as made up of three separate components here. So it's like stacked right on top of each other with like the header, the image, and then the row of all like the buttons and stuff. Now for that specific header, we can kind of break it down into like a row that contains the username and the profile picture, and then like the more options button. Oops. Yeah, as you can see, like the green rectangles, like they represent the rows. So, and then box, since you're stacking the plus button on top of the Instagram story bubble, that's like a perfect use case for box. So, you can see inside the box component, you're putting the image first and then the icon. Yeah, so next we'll talk about views. So here's like the most commonly used ones. We have text, image, and button. So text, it's like, again, pretty self-explanatory. Like it displays the string. So you can see on the bottom right, it's like example in code. Um, yeah, image. Uh, don't worry too much about like the r.drawable stuff, but yeah, essentially all you need to know is that like this built-in component lets us use images inside this app. And button, we'll talk a little more about this next lecture, but essentially, you can pass in functions to the button and, when you click on it, it'll, run that function. And then, yeah, inside the button, you can like put text like about us. It basically, you can determine how the button looks. Yeah. So on the left is like maybe the original text, and on the right is what we want to get to, right? So this is maybe what your design team might give you. And a lot of built-in composables, like text, for example, come with arguments. And yeah, like here are a couple of examples. So we want to make the text bigger, so that's like font size, and then maybe make it like a little more bold. That's like the font weight, color, screen, and then like text align, make it centered. And a lot of these like we'll learn through like practice with like the demos, but yeah, this is just like for some of these like changes, you can use like the built-in, you can like hover over the composables and see what they take in. And yeah, now some changes you can't necessarily use the built-in arguments. These are you have to use something called modifiers, which all built-in composables come with. So here you can see example, like all the text is like compressed, but maybe we want to, give it like a green background and make it like span like the whole screen size width. So here's like some two common ones. We can do fill max width or dot background with like green. And you can kind of see here that I chained the two of them. So a lot of times you'll create like modifier chains with all the different decorators or styling that you want. So yeah, here's a lot of the different modifiers that we'll go through. And yeah, don't worry too much about like knowing all of them. Like I still don't memorize a lot of them myself. A lot of times we just refer to documentation, but we'll go over some the more commonly used ones in the demos. Uh, yeah. Does anyone have any questions on the any of the previous stuff? All right. Um, let's see what time is it? 9:10. Okay. Yeah, I guess we have time for a quick demo. So if you guys want to follow along, um, you can open up Android Studio and the starter code should be in the relevant links. And you can just like copy paste that in. And yeah, I'll just do a quick new project. Yeah, so I guess this will be kind of a chance to introduce you to Android Studio, some of the basics here. You can like make a new project. Usually empty activity is the one we go for. We'll just call it like demo demo one. Don't worry too much about the package name. Like here, you can maybe if you're working for a particular organization, you just replace example with like app for example. Yeah, just create that. Nice. Okay, so this is like the main activity. This is pretty much like the place where like your UI actually is shown. But I'm going to create a separate component. And let's just call it expense row. Oops, actually, we might need to let it sync for a minute. Yeah, so I guess like, as we wait, this is a common Android Studio experience. You might have to wait for it to like, build with Gradle. Oh, right, file structure. So yeah, this is actually pretty important. So here you can see that like this app folder contains like, I guess your app code. And you can go to source as like the case of many code. And then don't worry too much about tests for now. Just go straight into main. And then Java, it opens up already, but basically inside this is like the name, like demo one that we gave it. And yeah, you can like access all the different files you create here. And yeah, we'll talk more about res later, but like, as an aside while we wait, like res is where you might store some like images that like, I guess, or pictures that you might use that the design team has. All right, great. Yeah, so you can also switch between project and Android. So project will kind of let you see it like the overarching directory structure, but like Android kind of like does away with all that and goes straight into app. Yeah, right here. Perfect. Nice. All right. I'm just gonna copy paste. Here's okay. Preview thing here. Close. This is done. Okay, perfect. Yeah, we just have to wait for it to run.
are you guys able to access this tablet?
Yeah, I guess as we wait for it to load, a nice part about Compose is you don't want to have to run the emulator with your app all the time because sometimes they'll be pretty slow to build. So there's a neat feature called app preview. So you can just add that annotation right above like, this composable, and then it'll let you see it. Okay, I don't know what's happening here, but yeah, it'll let you see it in this little sidebar, which you'll see in a sec. Oh, okay. Yeah, this is another thing. So you might have to import stuff. Yeah, so usually if you just like hover on top of it, it'll like most of the time it'll show you the one that you need to import. And then yeah, there should be a setting actually that I'll just like show on and after that will let you import just like anything that's like unambiguous. But for now, yeah, this is good experience to show you that. But yeah.
I think I do typically have that setting on, unless it's I'm working on like a stuff like migration or something where like the imports that Android Studio wants to import may not be like the exact imports that I want, but that is a very uh rare use case. So yeah, having that auto import feature on is very useful.
All right, perfect. Sorry for the wait. You guys probably can't see it too well, but uh, it says groceries and the date. Let me just turn on this setting. Background equals true, and then it'll probably be white. Okay, not sure. Yeah. So yeah, let's try and like work with some modifiers and try and make it look a little nicer. So first off, well, I guess maybe I should turn this to false because I want to show you that we can make the background of it white. So yeah, let's go to the column or actually the row. Um, yeah, one of the that's all good. Great. Oh,
Oh, you.
oh, whoops, spell error. And yeah, okay, so that, will let us make the background white. And then, we can also try and like, if we want to have this on the screen, expand to the full screen width, right? We can use the fill max width. And next, maybe groceries is like the header, right? So we might want to make it a little more bold. If you hover over text, you can see one of, it has a lot of arguments, as I mentioned before, but the one that we want in particular is font weight. So you do this, and then, yeah, so there's like different options, but in our case, we'll choose bold. Nice. And then you can see the 100 and like the grocery, it's like kind of misaligned. We want to kind of center that. So a useful feature of or argument of row is the vertical alignment argument. So yeah, so you can see like when you start typing it out, Android Studio will like kind of show you the different options that you have. So in our case, we want to center it vertically. Yeah. All right. And then maybe we want to have the 100 like pushed a little bit more to the like we want like some space in between them, right? So another feature that we can use is horizontal arrangement. And then pretty similar to alignment, it'll show you the different ones. So space evenly, end, start, center. In our case, we want a space between, which will just like push it as far as it goes. Yeah, let me just zoom out a little bit so you can see. Yeah. Um, yeah, and if you see like all the text and the components are kind of like they're like squished a little bit, so we can make use of padding, which will let us kind of add some spacing inside of the component itself. So padding will add it like from the vertical and the horizontal, but you can also just have like it for vertical or horizontal like by itself if you don't, yeah. Let me just this import. Oh, and for those that are wondering, DP is essentially just think of it like pixels. It's just because like it's their way of like letting it like be consistent on different densities for the different phones. Yeah, I can also like, maybe we want to have it rounded, for example. One of the arguments of background is actually shape. So we can like, rounded corner shape. And then this will let us round the corners of the rows with, I guess with a border radius of 8 dp. Yeah. And you can test this out with like, more expense rows in like let's just say let's surround it with a column, for example. Yeah. Just let it autocomplete here. Yeah, and I guess, this is a good chance to show you guys like another feature like vertical arrangement. So, we don't want them to be spaced like so closely. So you can actually use like spaced by, which lets you specify the specific like DP value. We'll just do 8 in this case. Yeah. Let's do a little time check. Uh, yeah, you can also one interesting thing is you can have null parameters. So, in this case, we can have amount as like null. And if that was the case, well, we have to handle it. And you can give default parameters. So here you can just do like I'll show you title and date, but with like amount is yeah, just this. And it's not loading just because like we have here, but like amount equals null and amount is 0. Oh, is there another error? Oh yeah, again. Equals yeah, not sure what the issue is here, but in any case, I guess since it's almost time, does anyone have any questions on any of the things that we went over here? Yeah.
Ah,
Perfect. So this is a not safe call. So this is where you need to use the question mark.
yeah. So you guys might think at first that this is like a really annoying feature of Kotlin that, oh, I have to handle all these cases. But actually what it's forcing you to do is uh to recognize that like a value that may be null, like we cannot be accessing properties. So yeah, it just adds towards code safety and whatnot. And yeah, any questions? Any final questions?
Do you have a question? Okay.
Okay.
All right. Let's just show the QR code.
Yeah, how it should be right here. And yeah, I know that it had uh this version of Android Studio did have Copilot on. But yeah, while we are learning, right, we don't want to be dependent on Copilot. So I would highly encourage that we do not uh install that plugin until like after the course or like is it allowed in Hack Challenge?
I think it's allowed. Yeah,
Okay.
it should be
Yeah,
fine.
like when you're doing actual dev work, it doesn't really matter like how much like you're actually learning because like it'll just sort of happen, right? But yeah, in the beginning, it's really good to know the syntax by actually typing it out instead of having it autocomplete. So yeah. Oh yeah. So some action points before next week. Please enroll in the class if you have not yet. Uh, raise your hand if you're not in the ed discussion. Okay. So that shouldn't be a problem. And yeah, oh yeah, I think we sort of glossed over this, but Android Studio does have like an emulator with which you can use to actually see how it would look without actually having an Android app. So yeah, what we were dealing with was essentially just previews, which is not the actual app, but yeah, we can use an emulator to actually run the app. But yeah, be sure to set that up if you don't have Android. And yeah, I guess just explore Android Studio. Try to implement the eatery card on your own. The slides will be posted. So here's the attendance QR code. Yeah.
Yeah, I thank you guys for coming. Yeah, if any of you guys have any questions, we'll be staying after for a while. So yeah, just feel free to come on.